Ashe.
Good morning, Jose.
Good morning, Baba Jahi.
Good to see y'all.
Good to see you.
Oh, so he gonna talk
Indeed.
Mexican.
I know I'm getting older because I know Mama Cocky just came back from Arizona, and it takes me a long time to get warm now. So Arizona's more and more attractive to me.
Ashe.
So when you folks see me, we are, as we call it say in baseball, we are at the bottom of the batting order. Brother Ty, who I consider to be, he's a facilitator on the council, and I see him as almost like the baseball manager. And so when the batting order is cleared, our manager looks down the bench, and that's why I'm surprised to see Brother Greg here. I was like, Brother Greg is here, and he calls my name for the tie downs. I go, yeah, boss, what you need? He goes, you got to show up on Sunday. I got it.
Ashe.
So I thought, Brother Greg, I thought you was flying somewhere, brother.
I did too. Yeah, come hear you.
So yeah, it's good to see you. And as all y'all know, Brother Greg is essential to our community. Absolutely essential.
Ashe.
Even in spot on the ground, brother. So this is a big weekend for us. We have some of you got the news that we sent out. I think Friday night, I probably sent it out. But we had basketball tournaments on Saturday yesterday. Kids did well. I think the middle schoolers were in a playoff game. They didn't win, but it was an exciting game.
Ashe.
They played well. I was bouncing from game to game. I saw folks at the 9 o'clock, second and third grade. I left there and went to the 10 o'clock game, saw them play, and then we rolled over to the middle school game at 12. So it was good. And we're not over yet, though, because tomorrow we have, today, we have our oratorical festival that's going on, and that's going to be at Bishop O'Dowd High School in the theater. So, as they said back in the day, we're moving on up a little bit. This is our third annual oratorical fest. It's named in honor of Huey P. Newton. I have no idea why, but it is one of the great mysteries of the school. I'm sure he wrote a poem or did something somewhere that's buried somewhere, but somebody said Huey P. It sounds good to me, let's go. So Huey P. Newton Oratorical Festival, that's going on today. In the past, we had it right here. Last year, the mayor came by, it was packed to the end of the wall, and it was just not enough room. The parents wanted to complain was, I can't see my baby. If you work at a school, that's the biggest complaint you're ever gonna get. I can't see my baby, right? And so we got a parent who's working at Bishop O'Dowd. She worked it out, and so we have access to the theater today. We'll be there at 3 o'clock. Free parking, free tickets. So come on by, bring some folks. It's gonna be fantastic. You got some dramatic performances. You got some spoken word, some hip hop. Folks have been dropping some beats, right? I've been watching the last 4 weeks. This is pretty good. So check them out. Also for myself and my wife is right there. I think this is our first weekend without kids.
Oh, wow.
I don't know, it's been a long time. So this is we're calling that empty nesters piece. So all three of our kids are actually in DC now. Most of you know our two oldest are attending Howard. My oldest is graduating in a couple months. And our youngest, along with one of our students here, was invited to, they've been admitted to Howard. They've both been given scholarships, but they were also invited to apply to this program they have. It's in the second year of the program, where it's a program designed to identify incoming freshmen who might be candidates they want to promote and move towards a PhD program. So they've been in the final of the interview process there. So but we're here today to discuss the Passion of the Christ. And for those that are not familiar with the movie, it's an old movie, and you don't need to have watched the movie to know that what it's about. The Passion of the Christ, right? Jesus Christ. But in truth, no, it's not the Passion of Christ. We're going to talk about the Black folks version, which is the Black Panther movie. Now, I know, y'all was like, I'm about to leave. We'll talk about that. So, you folks know when they had the Passion of Christ, our Christian folks, they lost their mind. They was lined up in the theaters, they was praying, they was closing up church and going to the movie. They was going to the movie, going back to church, going back to the movie. They were inside the theater having, prayer revivals. Boy, it was a big deal. And so I think about that when I was watching and going to the movies and watching folks. It felt like the black folks' version of Passion of the Christ. A near religious experience for our folks who are buying up showtimes, buying up theaters, It's very similar when Spike Lee had his Malcolm X movie came out, and folks bought theaters. They wanted to make sure our young folks had opportunity to see this movie. This was a little different because we not only wanted that, we also wanted to be surrounded by a bunch of black folks. I mean, that really what it was about. We had fraternities and sororities. They just wanted to be around other black folks in the duration of this movie. I took, you don't know, but every quarter we have 4 progress report card periods here. Every quarter, at the very top of the quarter, I bring all the middle school students into my classroom, and we put everybody's name on the board, and next to their name is their GPA. We got full disclosure here. And so, and for each kid, they get a GPA goal. And your goal might be 3.0, it might be 3.8, depends upon your ability, where you stand, what you need to do. And so anybody that reaches their GPA goal, we close up shop. We have breakfast in the morning with moms on Friday, and then we'll be out of here. We head over to the Moscone Center. We hang out, play in the park. We hit the Metro Theater, 3D Max to go all out. Popcorn, soda, juju beans will work. We're just throwing candy in the air, having a great time. Afterwards, we go out to eat. And so, watching a movie, when it finally came up, as many of you, I'm sure you all saw the movie, when we saw Oakland come on the screen, folks lost their mind. Right? So in that moment, Baba Jeffrey, I don't want anybody down the aisle telling me, shh, right? I don't want to hear that, because they don't understand it. So you want folks surrounded by you, right? Yeah. So you can really, really take it all in. So it's the good stuff. The movie's gotten rave reviews, made lots of money. At this point, I believe it's the highest grossing superhero movie ever. Yeah. It has reached plateaus that no black movie has ever achieved. With the additional handicap, only having one little white person in the movie.
Well, it's like 2. It was like 2.
Right? You know, you gotta have bunches sprinkled around, you know. It's like watching drummer. You had to have one drummer. Had to be a white boy drummer. So anyway, it's fantastic. For some, it's just a comic. But as a reader of the comic books, it holds special value for me. I grew up reading comic books.
Me too.
I was a connoisseur and a collector of comics. I would go buy comic books. I got my secrets, my issues together. If I was missing an issue, I would go to comic book conventions looking for X-Men number 103, trying to find it. So I amassed. I read a lot, and so my wife appreciates that, because when we go to see these superhero movies, she frequently asks me questions, and I can answer them. And I can let her know that the reason why this particular villain has an issue, because back in the day, you know, so I can do that. And of course, brothers recently married or formerly married know that look your wife gives you when she gives that look like this, like, like that's how you spend your youth, right? Yes, I did. You're welcome. So when I was in school, and this is why comics are so dear to me, I was challenged in my reading. I was a below average reader. And I didn't know this. I know at some point, I recall seeing my mother, because right over there, recall seeing my mother having a meeting with our teacher. I don't know if I'm getting the story right, but this is how I remember seeing it, like, why's my mother here?
I can tell you the story.
I'm gonna go with my version, might make you look better. So they sat down, had a little meeting. Next thing I knew, I'm in a little reading circle, me and some other brothers, right? Might have been a sister there, mainly these brothers, and we had these big old books, and you read your 2 lines, pass it on to the next person, right? And so while that was going on, I also, in the schools, they had these book catalogs that you could go to. And so they published this kind of color, glossy newsletter that had all these books. I don't know if you remember these back when you went to school in Oakland in the 70s and such. And so you'd have the book, and you'd have each book, you'd have a little bio on the book and the price of it, et cetera. On the back, they had an order form. And so I started going through, and I'd order my books, and I'd have this long order form, and you write in the name of the book and the cost, and then you add everything up, and you have a little scratch paper and total it up. This is before we had the days of automatic carts in Amazon. So you do your own totals to calculate your own tax. But when it was all done, Mother was very supportive, but I had like 25 books on the list. You could get about 7 or 8, right? A lot. So I go back to school, I got my order form, got my check, and we wait about 6 to 8 weeks. This is again before Amazon Prime. You don't get nothing next day. So I get these books, and all those things led me to really get into reading. And after that point, my reading level went up significantly. We had a pastime in our family, and that was going to yard sales. This is all connected. We would go to the good yard sales. And again, if you're from Oakland, good yard sales mean the white folks' yard sales. Because the white folks was giving away all the good stuff, right? So we would go out to Alameda, and we'd head up to Skyline Boulevard, right? And dig into the, so it's kind of exciting. Why would we do all this, right? And so in that time, I recall my folks brought back home, they brought me this suitcase that was one of those older suitcases. If you've ever seen one of those black and white photos from like 1920, 1930, got folks at the railroad station, they got the nice hat, the suit and tie. They could be going just one station over, but they was dressed up. And they had that suit. I had one of those suitcases, right? And so I got the suitcase, I opened it up, and it had 2 zipper compartments. I still had that suitcase to this day.
Wow.
And it still contains what it contained in that day, which was, it was a treasure trove of comic books.
Yes.
And I began reading the first. And that's how I really got into it, and to the various heroes and sheroes and various characters. But in the time I was doing this, I was delighted, but I wasn't looking for a black superhero. That wasn't of interest to me. At that time. When I was a kid, I dreamed of the Raiders winning the Super Bowl. That was my big dream. And being able to ride my bicycle up my hill without stopping. So black superheroes, you know, they come and they go. Admittedly, also, I wasn't really a Black Panther fan, if I'm completely honest, because I wasn't, again, looking for it. Comic books at the time were full of colored people. They had green folks and orange folks. And there, you know, there was a Hulk, the She-Hulk, there was a Thing, it was orange and rocks. I mean, all kinds of colored folks. But it just wasn't a big deal. Also because I grew up in Oakland. So I was surrounded by black folks. Teachers was black, neighbors was black, my homies was black, everybody was black, right? So it just wasn't that big a deal. In fact, the Black Panther, at the time when I read comics again back in the 70s, he wasn't even that cool. At all. If we tell the truth. Because when you're 9, what interests you is super strength, you can lift a building, you can run really fast, or you can fly. Right. Everything else is like, And then comes Black Panther, he had agility. He could do flips, right? He could do flips. So I wasn't, even his suit wasn't really a superhero suit. It was more a costume. It was black. It wasn't like Iron Man. Iron Man got repulsors and he could talk to people. And his costume. I'm like, okay, come on, dude. That's it. So really, I never even bought a Black Panther comic book. I only knew about him because he was in other comics that I enjoy reading, right? Y'all follow me? Yeah. So Black Panther began in 1966, and when he was created, that's what he offered. You know, that would be the creators of the Black Panther, just two white guys named Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Stan Lee is founder of Marvel, and Jack Kirby, for those who don't know, he is a Hall of Fame. He is like the original artist, right? If there was like a Mount Rushmore of comic book artists, he would be the supreme one. He was that big a deal. And his comic books sell for quite a lot of money. But it was Marvel's attempt, because again, we live in a capitalist society, it was Marvel's attempt to take advantage of the Black Power movement that was emerging. And so you can see them kind of huddling up going, you know what? We need a black superhero right now. Yeah. When they created this superhero, in fact, the association of the Black Panther Party was not intended whatsoever. There was no connection. In fact, at one point they thought about changing the name to like the Yellow or Black Leopard because they didn't want folks thinking that this is somehow, Huey P. Newton incarnated. He put the mask up and his body sealed, right? Scare white folks. So, but they still recognized they were in the midst of this movement and they had to somehow tap into it commercially and artistically. At the same time, it wasn't just about this country. We had in the 50s and the 1960s, you had a surging of independent African countries. That was going on. We had Ghana claim its independence in 1957. There was Guinea in 58. The summer of 1960 alone saw the emergence of 12 countries, including Cameroon, Senegal, Mali, Congo, and others. In 1961, it was 4 more. 62 was another 4. And by 1970, it was 10 more countries, right? All this is going on. Right? At the same time, we had the emergence onto the national stage of some powerful African leaders. We had Jomo Kenyatta, had Kwame Nkrumah, and they began to take their place on the covers of Ebony magazine and Jet magazine, so they were introduced to us, right? This is going on at this point. So Stanley saw this, and all these ideas began to, I imagine, emerge and to inform him. In classic Marvel fashion, unlike DC, there's 2 major publishing houses. Most of y'all don't care about is comic books. But it's important. So there's 2 major publishing houses. There's DC and there's Marvel. DC is the first one. DC is Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. It's Wonder Bread kind of characters. They all perfect, chiseled cheeks. Everything the lines are perfect, right? DC is known because they created these fictional areas. Batman is in Gotham, which is a city that didn't exist at the time. But Marvel came and Marvel said, we're going to base our characters like Spider-Man and Iron Man in the real world. So because of that, Marvel's characters have flaws. Spider-Man had acne, had no game, couldn't get a girlfriend, always had issues, right? They had problems. So in that same vein, in that same thought, Marvel said we're going to have our stories be rooted in today. So they were based in places like Los Angeles and San Francisco and New York and Detroit. In fact, even Harlem. It was all realistically based. They had streets that you could travel on, right? Now, they weren't against creating fictional areas when they had to. They had a character called Submariner, who was the king of Atlantis. Some of y'all think it actually existed, but the king of Atlantis. And so since they were, as far as we know, the underwater king, they made it up. They created it. They created alternate universes, parallel systems. You can go through a wormhole, come out someplace else. They created these worlds. And so it is in this midst that they began to look at the Black Panther. So when it was created, they envisioned a powerful king steering a technologically and wealthy country, a wealthy black country, but the problem was no such country existed. So they had to make it up. They had to manufacture it because it didn't what? It didn't exist. There was no king like T'Challa. There was no country like Wakanda. There were elements of it and traces of it and threads of it, but in totality, it didn't exist. So they had to, again, like Atlantis, like some other galaxy, it had to be what? Created. Everybody with me?
Yes.
So it was a work of fiction. But they were moved by the time, the white folks being white folks, they had to throw in some things. They had to throw in vibranium, which is an element that, according to the story, came from the sky. It was an alien, not even a native to Earth. It came from the sky from aliens. Fell accidentally in Wakanda, and the folks in Wakanda worshiped the gift from the gods, and they would do little events around this mound that held on to the vibranium. Again, I say white folks being white folks. For those who study ancient chemistry, you know there's some folks who still believe that, in fact, it was also started by alien race. So, no different. No different. It's all the same. But Black Panther was reimagined. You know, we can thank our brother Ryan Coogler and some other folks, Reginald Hutland, Ta-Nehisi Coates as well, for stepping in and reimagining Black Panther. So all the things that you think of when you see Black Panther is really because of black writers. They came in and they created female warriors. Again, all the things I'm telling you didn't exist when Black Panther was first created. They created, for example, the female warriors, the Dora Milaje, who were the female warriors who were the best female warrior from one of the 18 tribes that comprised Wakanda. That, again, didn't exist. They embedded spies, and you have described the uncle was in Oakland, and we saw a scene where it appeared like they were embedding folks within Nigeria to free the sisters who had been kidnapped. They used as the goddess, they used goddess Bas, who is a Kemetic netter, or netterer, who protected Laura Kemet and had the caricature of a cat, right, as their primary deity. They refused to allow folks, particularly the West, to come into their country. They transformed T'Challa, the king of Wakanda, from being just a cool black man. Because in the first comic book, he was just a cool black dude. Right. In fact, there's one scene where the Fantastic Four, this is where he first appeared, they're walking through his mansion, his palace, and one of the characters makes a comment about that he's so cool. Look how he merges the old with the new. He has a cassette player with his stereo. He was just a cool black man. These new writers, they began to envision him as a combination of both Malcolm and Kwame kind of combined with a little touch of Haile Selassie. Wakanda became this unbeatable country, yet through all of the transformations, it was still, unfortunately, a work of fiction. Designers struggled to try to create the image and the visuals that you saw because it was a struggle for them. But they got it. They got some good stuff in there. They tapped into the Zulu. They tapped into the Chicana, the Maasai tribe, the Dogon people. Those the fictional tribe of the Jabbar was based on the Dogon. They also studied and looked at the sacred geometry because some of the designs have intricate triangles and shapes that are part of the sacred geometry, which is one of our studies. They did all these things, and in doing so, they created an excitement amongst the people. It was hard to see the movie and not be excited. The visual generated excitement that was palpable. You could almost taste it. You could almost taste it in the air as you were in the movie and coming out. Black folks were rejuvenated because it was a glimpse at black excellence rooted in cultural authenticity. That's the important. We've seen black excellence.
Yeah.
We've seen it before, and if we hadn't, we'd be really in trouble. But we hadn't seen it like that.
Yeah.
You know, almost uncompromising. So it was powerful in that. But I know our people. I've been at Woze for 2 decades, and we know at Woze we get some scholars and some great thinkers, and we got a lot of folks that just been jaded. Most of us come here because we got a little jaded about something like, I'm not down with that. That's not true. And so, because some folks will say it's just a movie. You know, after a while, it's like, how many times can you see folks call out Wakanda forever? You know, and arms crossed. You know, I mean, after a while, it's like, man, you just can't help but just roll your eyes. Here we go again. But trust me, it's been going on for a long time. But that's what we are. But I want to remind us that Oyikwe Armour, who was the author of 2,000 Seasons, one of our books of our canon, he spoke to us who he calls the seers, hearers, and doers of the way. It's important for us to remind us of our theology. Sometimes we get a little cavalier what our theology is. It's kind of floating around in space sometimes. If we were to have a quiz with folks right now and because I do online quizzes with my students now. We did an online quiz right now based on Woze's theology. I'm not sure what your scores might be. I'm not sure what my score might be, to tell the truth. But it was based on his understanding of the sacred way, and he talked about hearers, seers, and doers, those who understood the way. And he says to us, in our attempt sometimes to chastise those who don't get the big picture, who don't get it, he says to us, it is a waste. Now he's talking to y'all, us. He says it is a waste of the seer's thought, the hearer's breath, a waste of the utterer's spirit to pour blame on such natures, on the people who just get excited on things they see on screen. As Brother Jeffrey might say, chasing the shiny things. It is a waste of time to pour blame on them. Were the surrounding order, the order of the way, will be rooted in the way, the sacred African way, these also would again be people of the way. They would join. They would be a part of this. It is their nature, unfortunately, to flow along channels already deepened by recent flow. They don't create new pathways. They find ones that already exist, and they walk across those pathways. It is not in their nature to wonder, threatening their easy peace with thinking if channels already found run true. If I can leave high school early and get a signed contract to the NBA and make lots of money, that's a course that runs true. I'll take that course. No matter if hundreds of thousands of young men fall asunder because they don't all get NBA contracts. He says, finders they are, not makers. We supposed to be the makers.
Right. Yeah.
Would you too, he says, in pride, miming, that is chastising, cursing out the white folks, the deafy people, would you also heap contempt on your own folks who can't see? And he says, and I love this line, he says, if so, do it directly then, and for your own satisfaction undisguised. Understand, you ain't trying to help folks out. You're just doing it because it's going to satisfy you.
All right.
Our people's excitement demonstrates a hunger, a need that is at times painful. It's like if you haven't eaten for days, and you start getting that shake, and you can get excited not just by eating food, but just by smelling it. Our folks walk in the theater, they didn't get a meal, they smelled something. Our excitement is genuine, but it reveals an absence of authentic culture. We are like children excited by a fantasy, trekking off to Disneyland, believing the reality of its characters. Now, we're not quite that bad. We're not quite the little child of Disneyland who believes that Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck are in fact real, but it's kind of close. Were we wearing African garb when we went to the movies?
Yeah.
Or just the costume? See, because there's a difference. Sometimes you're just dressing up. And in that instance, were Africans being African, or was it just that the black version of Star Wars without the lightsabers? Dressing up, as we say, as our favorite characters. But it's important to understand our people because our loss has been great. We know our story very well, but rarely sometimes we reflect upon the impact of the story. I want to remind you and tell you a story of Maya Angelou. Many of you know her story. When she was a young child, about 3 years old or so, her parents had a divorce, and they shipped her back down, literally shipped her back down to her grandmother, who was in Stamps, Arkansas, deep country. And she stayed there for many years. at one point her mother, many years later, sent for her, and Angela and her brother, who was 1 year older, they moved to St. Louis, Missouri. It's the urban oasis, it's, cars and, big buildings and everything, and it was amazing. And she lived with her mother and her mother's boyfriend. Soon after moving there, her mother's boyfriend raped her, and not just once. And so there was a trial eventually, and the mother's boyfriend was found guilty, and he was left on his own reconnaissance to return and serve his time. It was 1 year and 1 day, and that the next day afterwards he was found dead. And they believed that her uncles, who were straight up criminals, had in fact killed him. And because of that occurrence, she chose to not speak anymore, because she felt that her words, by calling out what had happened to her, had caused this man's death. And it's a complicated story. Child molestation can be complicated. But after a certain point in time, her mother's people got tired of her ways, that she would just sit, almost appearing to be sullen, having an attitude, because she wouldn't speak to anybody. And so they just got tired, and they just sent her back down to be with her grandmother in Stamps, Arkansas. And when she got there, she let it reflect, and she said that the people of Stamps helped her to heal in a way that would not be obvious. She says, they showed me a contentment based on the belief that nothing more was coming to them, although a great deal more was due. Their decision to be satisfied with life's inequities was a lesson for her. And our people become like that. We become content with life's inequities. We become content with being small when we should be occupying large spaces. We suffered a profound loss because of the European slave trade. And this is important that we understand. We didn't suffer loss. We suffered a loss not for what we don't have, but what we could have been. I repeat that. Our loss is not based on what we don't have, but what we could have been. How powerful would we have been had we stayed on those shores? Many times we have said that the action we should have taken is just slicing folks in the throat when they arrive. If we had stayed there, what could we have done? I'll remind you earlier, I said that the makers of Black Panther had to tap into a fictional narrative because there was no real narrative. How much more could we have accomplished if we hadn't and don't spend decades and sometimes perhaps centuries discussing about issues of identity and racism and trying to figure out if in fact we are worthy? If we didn't waste our time with that. Now, given our conditions, some of those questions are necessary, but they don't really advance us to where we need to be. Okay. Walter Rodney, in How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, described the near annihilation of an entire continent. He says that the continent's population during the time of Europeans plundering, and when I say time, that's both past, present, and future, during the time of Europeans' conquest of Africa, that the population remained stagnant while other continents grew. Europe, for example's population over a period of from 1650 to 1800 increased by about 300%. Asia by about 250%. In the same time period, Africa did not increase in population at all. Essentially, our continent was dying. Now, if that doesn't rattle you, if it doesn't bring it home to you, I'll explain it this way. It would be as if you had a wife and you had 2 children, and you raised your 2 children, and by the time they're about 14 or 15, you got snatched away or you were killed. You understand that? Yeah. That is the nature of having a population that does not grow. So we saw this as it was raped dry. So we didn't discuss about vibranium because we had uranium on the continent. We have gold, we have diamonds, we have copper, and it's important when I say these things not to think about jewelry, because jewelry is incidental. Uranium powers weapons. We know that gold for him becomes painful because in that sense, we're like children without mothers and without fathers, left adrift. I'll return to the story of Maya Angelou at one point when she was with her grandmother before they had gone back to St. Louis for a moment to get her and her brother. They had been with their grandmother for several years, and at one point near Christmas, their mother, who they had not seen, sent them over Christmas gifts. And their grandmother gave these children their Christmas gifts, and they went out. I reflect on the words of Marcus Garvey, and I get excited. I get shook a little bit because I know what is possible for us. Our sacred writings tells us that no member of me is without God.
Yeah.
No member of me is without God.
Yeah.
When Brother Ray gave the meditation, he said your stomach and your thighs are relaxed. That meditation draws in part from our sacred text. It says that every single part of you is a member of God. And if we internalize that attitude, then that means there's nothing that we're not able to do. In other words, we can manufacture the fictional and make it real. I sit here at Wose and I sit at Elam every single day, and I tell you, it's almost like when you saw the movie and that ship came descending over the farmland, and all of a sudden the camouflage shield was kind of pulled away. You could see this amazing city. And I'm sure every one of y'all saw that and you thought, ooh, man, it's amazing. And in some ways, that's like when folks come here. I know in particular, as the director of our school, parents will go online, they'll Google black schools. Maybe they put an Oakland there. And unfortunately, we have a website, so it pops up. And they say, oh, let me come by and take a visit. And I've shared the story with you before. There have been times when folks would come to see our school and turn the corner and just kept on going. Now, it also depends upon whether you are coming from 580, because you come from 580, you got a little bit of nicer run, get past Bishop O'Dowd, hit MacArthur, you're kind of okay, you start, right? You come off 880, you ain't got a shot, right? And so when folks come down 90 to make that right on left on Holly, and they see transients, they see trash, they see stuff all over the place, they can't fathom their kid, their child, their precious cargo, because they don't want their population to be stagnant. They can't imagine dropping it here. But then they come through the gate, and they open up the door, and all of a sudden they see these kids. You know, a couple years ago, they was in Mama Darnisha's classroom. Kara just stepped out, Brother Monty's right there, and they see these kids learning and experiencing not only just an educational advancement and success, but also they can feel a kid's love. Because you can go to a place, you know when folks love you and when folks don't. And they ain't got to tell you nothing. And then for them, it's like the camouflage gets removed, and they go, oh, this is what you got here. In that way, it's almost like revealing a new world.
Yes.
So I got to call to arms to y'all. I'm going to wrap this up because my wife said, don't be long-winded. She didn't even say that. She didn't even say that. But a call to arms. Like the Carter G. Woodson and many of our other scholars, they travel.